Hi, my name is Peter Hayden, and the purpose of this video is to provide you a bit of a brief tour of Microsoft Fabric and give you a bit of a demo of what's possible. So on the screen here, I am in my workspace, and a workspace is a basic construct. Typically, think of it as like a security boundary. It's a space where you can then manage and collate the various types of tasks, activities that you use as part of a building your analytics flows, bringing data in, transforming it, preparing it, visualizing it. And one of the things I like about Fabric is to have this sort of task flow here. So you can see these visuals on the screen, you can see these colors, and it gives you a representation of what is happening. We've got in the green over here, we've got two different data sources landing into our data store, into the data lake, got some preparation activities, we're doing some analyzing training, building a semantic model, and visualizing. And you can customize how this looks. It's quite flexible. Without that, you'd normally have a list of items in your workspace, but with this I can click on, say, my data store, I can see my lakehouse that is here. So these are all tagged. There are some inbuilt patterns to give you, so you can start with, but I've just it was creating the demo that I did this afterwards. It's great for self-documenting. It's a really nice feature. So let's walk through what is here. So this is what's typical in terms of what is available. In this case, I'm using a data pipeline task to get to data in. If I click on my pipeline, I can see I've got this copy task here. I've got my settings, so it knows where the source is. This is from a sample data set. Destination to my lakehouse. It's going to a table, and it's got the table location there. I could go to a file. And so it's a mapping between the columns, the source and destination. That's a really simple task. What I might do, if I go back to my workspace, is I actually create a new task. Now I could go here to add, new item up the top here, again, and I've got a range of activities that I can use, which is everything you can do in Fabric. Or using my note down the bottom left here, I could go into Data Factory and see what I have, particularly around bringing data in. And there are lots of options here. I'm going to use a data pipeline. Let's give it that default name. And all I want to do is show you is what's possible. If you're familiar with Power BI, it uses Copy Data Assistant. This is just one example. There's lots of different ways to bring data in. But we can see where our data sources are. And if I get a new data source, I can use our OneLake already. If I hit View More, you can see a range of different services here. So there's lots of flexibility for you to then bring data in. I'm just going to cancel that and go back to our workspace where we've got things already prepared. Okay, so we've got data coming in. We've got a sample set from this NYC taxi data set. It's got about 72 million rows, and we've got a public holidays sample data set as well. And it's coming into our lakehouse. So let's go have a look at our lakehouse. So I've got in here, you can see I've got a public holidays from the sample data set and our NYC taxi data set as well. I've also processed some data into these other two tables you can see. If I was structuring this in a production environment, I might have my Medallion architecture represented here, but for purposes of demoing, I've just kept it very simple. You'll notice it's spending a lot of time loading in what is actually quite a small table. Now, in my demo environment, it is shared capacity, I guess, with other people running a trial. The first time it loads, because it's been asleep, it takes a bit longer. Now, if I go to a slightly larger table, when I preview that, that should be faster than that 35 seconds, and there's the data there. Now, if I want to query this, I can use a SQL endpoint. So tools I'm familiar with. And if we switch up the top here, it's actually telling us with this little prompt, I can use my SQL Analytics endpoint. Now I can use this to run some queries. So let's give that a go. I've got some queries down here. If you're familiar with T-SQL, these will look pretty familiar. So I'm going to run this here. And we can see I've got public holidays with a date, the country of origin. We'll do something more with that in a moment. Now I'm going to do a count on this NYC taxi data to see how many rows are in there. So it's got 76 million rows available in there. To get a sense of what there is, let's have a look. Run ACE at top 10. It's just my process data set. Hit run. And you can sort of see all of the data in there. Now, in our non-process, there's a, well, first of all, there's these pickup dates and times. And what I want to do is I want to be able to join these together with the public holidays, which are only a date format. And so you'll see when I do it through our data process, I've added this pickup date column here that allows me to join it on the public holiday dates. So the last thing I'll show you is the speed, doing a select and group by year and account. Now, I don't know, I haven't used on-premises SQL for a while, but it seems fairly efficient to run this query over this data set in under 10 seconds to give me an idea of how many of those rows are there. So it's quite performant, as you can see. Now I'm going back to my workspace, so that's great. I've got my idea of what's there, but I want to actually pair that data. So there were a couple of things I wanted to do. First of all, I want the Australian public holidays. So I've got my data flow here, and this is a great low-code method to be able to filter. And if you're familiar with Power BI and Power Query, you can see on the right-hand side these applied steps. I've applied a filter on these rows. I've only got this Australia as a region. Now my destination is, if I hover over that, to a table called Australian Public Holidays and into my lake house as well. So that's fairly straightforward. I'm going to close that and exit out of that data flow. And I'm going to go into my processing for NYC Taxi. Now you can apply notebooks and other things as well. Don't have to use Power Queries. This is the way I've done it. Kept it fairly simple. And if you look at the steps on the right here, I have actually added a custom column. So if I click on that, you'll see it says pickup date on the right hand side, and we can see that I've formatted that to use a date format and take out that time element. And I've also changed some of the columns just so they're in currency mode. So when I use Power BI, they're representing as dollars, not just decimals. So apply that through. An example of that is the dollar figure here on the tolls amount, so currency format. And again, I've got that destination going to NYC Taxi processed table. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's go back and I'll do one more thing before I show the visualization. Go back to our workspace. I've got to remember to close these as you go. So the experience is getting there. It's got a little bit to do. I thought this would be interesting to show you around using a notebook of what's possible to query your data, so that ad hoc analysis that you might want to do. So this is using a notebook format. This is using a notebook format. I'm going to clear my outputs just to show you. Now I'm using Spark SQL. So this is like T-SQL, but Spark SQL. It's a little bit different. And if you're not familiar with notebooks, there's a range of cells you can have and group them together, and they can then work off each other. So I'm going to run that. Now, see at the top here, it's connecting. It's spinning up the compute required to run this. So this runs I can't remember the back end, but it's like a SQL pool of sorts to then process this information. So it might be whatever the back end clusters are to process this. And given it's not SQL queries, it's probably Apache Spark to do that. So we see it's running. We should have the output shortly. We're only doing a select, but again, we're spinning that up. And we can see the pickup date, passenger count, trip distance, and total amount that we have here. Now, I haven't run this one either, so let's run this using different languages, PySpark or Python, to be able to then process this data. And we've got a visualization plotting in the trip distance and the total amount, and there's a correlation, as you'd expect, where the longer you go, the more you're going to pay, with some sort of outliers there potentially. Now let's do something a bit different. I've already processed this, and this, I'll run it again for you. We're actually doing a fare estimation model. So what we want to do is be able to give it a value such as distance and predict what the fare will be based on our sample set. So this is a very similar, simple linear regression model that we can use. So what it's doing here is creating the model, running the model, training it, and I'm not a data scientist by trade, but it will give us some sort of understanding of how accurate this might be. And here we go. This is our the model that's been run and an experiment. If I click on that, it gives us information on how the experiment was run. Okay, I'm just going to skip that for now. And we can see, so a data scientist would understand what this is all about. We'll look at the loss and how accurate it was, and make good judgments on that. Let's go back to our notebook. So I can scroll down though and go, well, what does that look like? What does it predict? So if I run that against our model that we've just created, it's going to go, well, for a trip distance of 5 and a passenger count of 2, what might that look like in terms of cost? And it's estimating $30. Now I can just go change this. Let's say we're going to go 20 miles. I'm assuming it's miles. This is a NYC taxi data set. I'm going to have 5 people in the vehicle. What would that be? And it gives us to be about $63. So you think about what you might, if you use some rideshare apps and what it estimates, it's probably something more sophisticated than this, but as a simple model, it gives you an idea of how it might be, understanding how far you're going, how many people, if that's included, and then giving you an estimated price. Last thing, I've skipped over it up here, is there's a lot of other inbuilt tools available to you. Just in a simple select statement, you can go to inspect and just see inside the data and pick up some information, which might be around, information that's missing, where there is no passenger count, or pickup date, or there might be number of unique passenger counts. So there's not a lot of variation, as you'd expect. Cars of a certain size, they're not going to have lots and lots and lots of people. But it allows you to then do that exploratory analysis around your data sets, which could be quite helpful. So let's go back to our workspace. We've looked at data, we're storing our data, we've queried it, we've prepared our data, we've analysed and trained. Now let's get into some reporting. To do that, we need to build our semantic model. So this is what Power BI uses to then report off. And what this allows you to do is bring your data together. So I'm going to go open my data model. And again, if you've used Power BI, this will look very familiar. And in my model, I've got 2 tables. I've got our Australian public holidays. So that's just a filtered set of holidays for Australia. And I've got that processed NYC taxi data set, which has the pickup date in there. In fact, this is the join. You see it's highlighted. I click on that between the Australian public holidays and the NYC processed pickup date. And that's all I need to do to link these two together. So let's close out of here. I think this will give me a, no, let's do it. And let's go to visualize and go into my report. So let's open the report now. And we'll see that we've got all of our data here, and I've got a simple date by count of trip type, just as an idea of total counts. 73 million total different trip types, unique, not unique, count of all of them, and our fares. Now, I've got a filter over here. Well, it's not even a filter, it's a list of our public holidays 2015. If I click on Anzac Day, our map is just still loading in the background. Here it comes now. We can see, if we zoom in, we've got 75,000 trips represented here. And the size of the bubble, if we hover over, there's one over here, it's a little bit bigger. Why is it so? It's going to be because the trip distance is very large. So it's a pickup location. So someone's gone here and gone a long distance. But as we zoom in, we can see how we're representing thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of data points. It's quite a, I'm zooming in, I'm not editing the video to do this, of what is happening. And so this is just a really simple way to do that analysis. Now, you would have seen some anomalous data out here in the ocean, because these data points have if we zoom out a bit further, down here, have a no latitude and longitude, so it's centered them all here. So this would be a clue to go, well, maybe we need to remove those from our process data set, so we're not having that these show up. And then in terms of our analysis, we can certainly look at, well, what days are the busiest. I think we can even sort that. Anzac Day, I know it's Australian public holidays with a US data set. For purposes of demoing, this is okay. Very busy on that particular day compared to, say, New Year's Day, which is also busy for that. And we've got about 10,000 or more than 13,000 less trips or thereabouts. So the standard Power BI features are here. You can sort of filter and look at the total fare amount versus the trip amount versus the tolls amount, and see what proportion they are. And then you can use the visualizations to build and explore further. Okay, so that's a bit of a high-level overview of Fabric, a little demo of what's available. Hope that was useful. And there's so much you can do. This is a real trivial example just to show you that it certainly is possible. We've looked at some considerably large data sets compared to a lot of corporates, but we've got customers who are using this for small data sets and much larger data sets, and the sizing and scalability of Fabric makes it really flexible to cater to what you're looking to achieve.